click play, you can see our stamina bar is increasing, but if I hold down shift, our stamina bar decreases. What is up, you guys? Today I'm going to be showing you a tutorial on how to set up the sprinting and run feature for our horror game series. So that way, not only are you starving to death from your enemy, you can actually run away from them. So this is how you do it. The very first thing you're going to want to do is you're going to want to open the project settings. So come up here to edit and to project settings. From here, you're going to want to find the input and then simply make a action mapping and then change that name to sprint, and then simply select the key binding that you want for it. For this example, we are going to be using the left shift button. So once you have that done, close it out, and we're going to want to actually open up our BP here. So if we open it up, so once you have it opened up, we're going to want to create two variables. The first variable we're going to want to do is stamina. And we are going to make sure that this is a integer. And the reason we're doing that is because we're going to give it a numeral value, so that way we can actually deduct from it. Now, if you want the player to start with no stamina, you can leave your stamina set to 0. But if you want to have them start with full stamina, give them 100. The next thing we're going to want to do is we are going to want to add another variable, and this one is going to be called is sprint, or is sprinting, because we're going to be checking to see if the character is actually going to be sprinting. From here, change this to a boolean, and then compile and save. So now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to create an action event. So if you right click and do sprint, you can actually get an action event right here in the menu option. And so now what we're going to want to do is we're going to basically set up a check to see if we are going to be meeting the stamina requirements to even run in the first place. So if the button is pressed, we are going to want to do a branch. And from that branch, if the condition is correct for a greater than or equal to of our integer to integer, we are basically going to be getting the stamina. And so if the condition is if our stamina is 1 or greater, we are basically going to have enough energy to run. If it does not have 1 or greater, there's no energy there and you cannot run. So for our top section here, we are going to just basically drag in and get our stamina for that. So now what we're going to want to do is from our true section, we're going to want to set is sprint, or whatever our actual variable is that you made, and you're going to want to check that. So basically, if the stamina is meeting the requirement that we want, it is going to be true and we're going to be able to run. And so now what we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to change our walk speed for that. So come up here to the character movement and get a reference to that and change or set max walk speed. And what this is doing is it's going to be saying like, hey, is there more than one thing of stamina? Yes, there is. If this is true, we're going to be setting the sprinting function, and then of which we're going to change our speed. And for the third person template, it's 600, so simply just double that. So now if there's enough energy, it's going to be running, and the running is going to be double the speed we are currently doing if there wasn't any stamina. And we're going to do the same thing on the released section. So what you're going to want to do is you are going to want to drag out, and you're going to want to do is sprint or is sprinting. Make sure this is unchecked, because if it is not sprinting, it's going to reset our original walk value back to 600, because we're not running, because we're not pressing the button, or we don't have the energy there. So if we compile and save this, we can actually see this work firsthand. So if I'm just walking around, you can see that the speed is normally 600. But if I hold down the left shift, we run even faster. Now if I let go, we go slower. And if I hold shift, we are running super fast now. So basically we have the general functionality done. So let's go a little bit more deeper into finishing this up and actually setting this in place for our HUD. So what we're going to want to do now is we're going to want to go back to our third person BP. And you are going to want to find the event tick. And we're going to want to drag this out so we can give ourselves a little room, because we want our stamina decrease to be running on the same event tick as our hunger, just on a different set of lines. And the best way to do that is to use a sequence node. So if I set up a sequence node here, we can clearly run our hunger tick formation up here in the top. But now we have the option, as seen here, to run another set of code. So now let's get to actually setting up the functionality here. So from the then one, we're going to want to do a branch, because we're going to do another check here to see if we are going to be running. If we are running, our stamina is going to decrease. If we aren't running, our stamina is going to increase because we're not using any energy. So for our is sprint, we're going to get this, and this is going to be our condition for which we're going to be checking. And we're going to set a delay for both of these, because we are going to slow down our tick process, so it's going to be a little bit more noticeable. So delay for both, and as you can see, we're running out of room, so make sure you give yourself enough room to do this. Okay, so for the next thing, we're going to want to, for our true delay, we're going to want to set another branch to do a check to see what our stamina is doing. So basically, for the condition, we're going to want to do a less than or equal to integer, and our stamina is going to be getting for this top section here. So basically, if it's going to be like less than or equal to 0, we are going to stop sprinting, and our stamina is going to refill. If the opposite's true, our stamina is going to decrease because we're using it up. So now for our true here, we're going to want to drag out, and we're going to want to do is sprinting or sprint on, depending on what you have. And we are going to set that and make sure that basically it's unchecked, because if it's not, we're going to set our walk speed back to default. And so set max walk speed to the default 600, because we are not running anymore. And of course, for the target, make sure that you have the reference to our character movement. So now what we're going to want to do is we're actually going to want to get rid of the stamina here, because if we're losing it, we're not going to be using it. So come down from the false and do set stamina. And now what we're going to want to do is we're going to want to get a integer minus integer, as seen here, and then we are going to want to bring in the reference to our stamina here. So now that's done, we're going to actually want to set up the regeneration side of things. So the way to do this is if we come down and set stamina again, kind of like we did with the first one, but instead of subtracting, we're going to be adding our integer plus integer, which is right here, and then we're going to get the reference to our stamina. So now let's actually be able to see this in progress. So what we're going to do is we're going to do a print string, and the reason for this is we're actually going to see our number be like increasing or decreasing accordingly, and then we'll just do the same thing here as well, print string. And so if we compile and save this real quick, so if I click play and I hold down shift, you can see we're at 25, but if I let go, we're at 12, 42. If I hold down, went to 36. So we can clearly see that it is working. And so let's go back here and then let's get rid of our print strings because we don't need them anymore, and compile and save. One thing I did end up doing outside of this video was that I came back and I added a branch here, because what happened was the stamina was going above the 100. So if you come down to the false section on our delay, add a branch and do a less than integer, less than integer. So if I did integer less than integer as seen here, basically I set this to 100 because what happened is if the stamina is less than 100, it's going to be regenerating, but once it hits 100, don't regenerate anymore. And then I just simply got a reference for our stamina. So that is how you set that cap. But once that is done, you are 100% done on this sprinting function. So compile and save, and then come back and let's actually work on the HUD aspect of things. So what you're going to want to do is click on your stamina bar, and if you scroll down to process, do binding, and create a binding. So this is pretty much basically the same thing as our hunger. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to cast to third person character, or whatever your character is. And then for the object, you are going to want to get the player character. And then as for the third person character, you're going to want to get the stamina. Now for our return node, we are going to want to get a divider for float divided by float, and we're going to be dividing this value by 100. So now we got to make this conversion, and so to do that is just bring in the stamina, and so our stamina is being divided by that 100. And so if we compile and save, we should be able to see that in functionality now. So if we click play, you can see our stamina bar is increasing, but if I hold down shift, our stamina bar decreases and increases and then decreases.